Good evening. Welcome to episode 9 of SHEMAKERS. I am your hostess and Shavonna Williams. I am the CEO and founder of Heels and Helmets, and thank you for joining us for another episode of SHEMAKERS. I am really excited about tonight's show. As you all know, it is Equal Pay Day, and we have someone who knows about using your voice to make change. I have worked in marketing, communications, and sales for more than 2 decades across government, politics, and 5 major sports leagues. So of course, I've been in some boardrooms where I was the only woman. I'm working to change that. My goal is to get more women in the boardroom with equal pay. Throughout my career, I've been fortunate enough to work with some incredible women who are not only talented and killing the game, but share my passion to help women succeed. They want to help you develop your winning playbook to win in business and life. These friends of mine, SHEMAKERS, are joining us to have conversations to help you navigate business and develop tactics to succeed. So what is a SHEMAKER? A SHEMAKER is a woman or a man who is talented and skilled, but also works to help women succeed. You are a SHEMAKER, and I am here to help you get in the end zone, make big plays, and win. Let's meet tonight's SHEMAKER coach. Tasha Cole is currently the Deputy Executive Director and Chief Diversity Officer for the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, a historic role in the organization's history where she is responsible for fostering the organization's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion in operations, voter mobilization, vendor recruitment, staffing, and candidate recruitment. She is also the Democratic co-chair for the Board of Directors for Running Start, a national organization founded to train high school, college, and young professional women to develop the confidence, capabilities, and connections they need to run for elected office and win. In this role, she serves as an ambassador for the mission and provides advice, oversight, and counsel to the organization and its president. She has also traveled the country conducting leadership trainings on running for student government or public office to nearly 300 young women on college campuses. She is a proven leader committed to advancing communities, opening doors of opportunities, and transforming the status quo. Affectionately known as the broker of people, Tasha taps her vast network to create opportunities for emerging leaders and advance equity and inclusion in underrepresented sectors. Her political experience goes so much further beyond her current role. She worked and led resource development for the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, raising nearly $70 million in revenue to implement programs that transform communities. She has also worked with 3 presidential campaigns, 5 political conventions, 2 statewide ballot initiatives, and deputy campaign manager for a U.S. Senate campaign in Florida. For nearly a decade, she was on Capitol Hill as the chief of staff, senior advisor, and communications director for 2 members of Congress from Florida. She is a proud graduate of Florida A&M University and a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated. So everyone, please welcome SHEMAKER coach, Tasha Cole. Go ahead, Deltas, get your ooh-oohs in, and rattlers, go ahead and strike. Here is Miss Tasha Cole. Good evening, Tasha. How are you?
Good evening. I'm so happy to be here. So excited. So excited. Thank you for having me.
Well, you are so welcome. Thank you for coming. As I was preparing for this show, I thought about all the fun that we have had working together. Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, your wonderful Super Bowl parties, you joining me to launch Heels and Helmets. I mean, we go back a long time now. I'm going to say we met when we were just 5 years old, though.
Yes. And you are the broker of people. You coined that for me. So
yes.
Just so the audience knows, she gave me that title and I have used it. I'm sure there's some royalty fee or something you want if I make it big.
No, actually, Tasha, I was going to share that story. It's so funny, you all, because everyone always asks me, "Oh, Shavonna, can you work with me? Can you brand me?" As if I can manufacture something. And I'm like, I can't build you, but what I can do is help you see who you are and define yourself and package that. And that's what the broker of people was all about. it's really true. Tasha works to connect people. Since I first met her, she has always been a resource. When I have idea, she says immediately, oh, you need to work and meet this person, or I need to connect you with this organization. They'll be a really great resource for Hills and Helmets. And I honestly remember when I told you that you were a broker of people, you said, I think I'm going to use it. And I said, you should. So you made me so proud when I opened up your bio and read that you were truly using the broker of people. I was like, that's what branding is all about. It is authentic. If you were not connecting people, I couldn't call you the broker of people.
I also have another title, tour guide of the talented 10th.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's Super Bowl parties. Some of those activities I have done. That's another fun title that I've had. So.
Very fun. Well, we know it has already been an historic year for women in politics, Tasha. Everyone knows Vice President Kamala Harris, but we also got the first woman to lead Treasury, as well as the first woman to lead national intelligence. So starting off 2021 with the bang. So what are your thoughts on all of these historic moments, and how do you think it's going to impact the next generation of women leaders?
I mean, I think women have been putting in the work. When I look at on the congressional, federal, down ballot, and across the aisle, there were a record number of women elected, Republican women elected to Congress. So, I mean, women are really making strides, continue to make strides. We have invested in ourselves and we are investing in each other. If we look at even in Louisiana right now, we may elect the first woman from the congressional delegation from Louisiana. And so there's a lot of historic happenings. And I think it's just our time. I think women have put in the time. We've done the research, but we've also taken advantage of opportunities. And I think we can learn from our sisters in other industries. We see there's a young woman in the NFL, I believe, who is now officiating. We see the tremendous work that our WNBA players are doing. So I think we're seeing this even in our law enforcement. I think down in South Florida, they are electing or appointed or elected a sheriff down in South Florida. And there are women all across this country taking leadership roles in many, many sectors. And so I think it's our time. Black women are magic. Black girls are magic. And so I think it's an exciting time for women in general, especially today with equal pay. We still have to celebrate this. We still have to recognize this. Women are still not making as much as men are, particularly Black women and Latina women. So this still needs to be something that we need to highlight and recognize this year, all throughout the year, but particularly today. So I'm honored to be here in that capacity as well.
Yes, and I'm glad that you also mentioned the disparity is different between African-American women, Latin women, as well as Native American women. So we will see those equal pay days later this year. With that said, Tasha, what do you think is the most pressing issue for women in our nation right now?
You know, it's interesting. I had a chance to travel over the weekend out of town. I have been vaccinated, so I want to just put out a plug for everyone who is watching. If you can get vaccinated, please get vaccinated. I can't stress how important this is. And I can tell you that it will provide you mental relief. I know there's a lot of energy out there about vaccinations in our community. My mother is a graduate of Tuskegee University. And so this is something that I'm keenly aware of, but I cannot stress how important it is to be vaccinated. There is a relief that comes that knows that you have some protection. We know it's not 100%, but it's better than what we had before. And so I had an opportunity to travel, and I will tell you that I think that women's health, this continues to be an issue for us. I think that we have to really continue to look at how are we disproportionately impacted by things like fibroids, other diseases, other health conditions that disproportionately impact women. And so I think that's something I want to encourage us to kind of keep attention on in all ways and manners, even with your healthcare provider, even with the doctor that you see. think about who's providing your services. Make sure that you have all the information that you need, your family history, because that becomes so critically important. We are still disproportionately impacted by so many diseases. There's not enough information out there about fibroids. There's some legislation that is out there to look at, to study that. But if we are not healthy, we cannot be successful in our jobs, with our communities, and with our work. So I think it's really important for us to continue to take care of ourselves, to eat right. I say this as somebody who loves all rich food, all pizza, all of those good things, right? But I think it's so important for us to take care of ourselves and to look out for each other. Check on your sisters. Be accountability partners to each other. But I think women's health is something that is still at the forefront. We still see women dying disproportionately from childbirth, from having babies. And when we look at infant mortality, and so even athletes, even our superstars who have access to the best healthcare, like Serena Williams, are still suffering from things that we should not be suffering from at this stage, where we are as a country, in the kind of healthcare that we provide and the resources that our country has access to.
That is excellent. And I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's one of the things that I also preach through Heels and Helmets. The program is called Fit First, and it just is to encourage women to put their fitness first, because we cannot accomplish anything else if we aren't healthy and whole. And that's physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. So Tasha, can you share with us and explain what the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee does?
Great question. I love answering that. It is called the DCCC, or the DCCC. We are the only political committee that is solely responsible for electing Democrats to the U.S. House of Representatives. So we are a political action committee, basically. We are a sister committee to the Democratic National Committee, which Jamie Harrison, African-American male from South Carolina, who ran for the U.S. Senate and almost beat Lindsey Graham and had a very successful first quarter fundraising. So we are sister committee to that, and a sister committee to the DCCC, which is the Democratic Senate Campaign Committee that is responsible for electing senators to the United States, to the Senate. So we are the sister committee. We have, when it's all said and done, we're going to probably have about 350 staff who are oftentimes spread out across the country. When we are ready to go back outside, last cycle we were virtual, and doing much of our campaigning online and being safe, like so many Americans were across the country. But we are responsible to work with campaigns, work with candidates, and work with our incumbent members of Congress, our Democratic member of Congress. We have about 14 departments. We probably raised close to $300 million. So we are basically an enterprise. And we have every department: political, our organizing, accounting, human resources, operations, communications, digital, and of course our finance and fundraising and accounting department. So we're a pretty big organization, but our job is solely to help elect House Democrats. Speaker Nancy Pelosi, the first woman to serve as Speaker. She is, kind of serves as our titular head. And then our chairman is Sean Maloney, who was just elected by his colleagues, and he hails from the great state of New York.
Awesome. Now, what was attractive about this role? You've had a lot of experience from communications, leading lawmakers, fundraising for the Congressional Black Caucus. Why was this the next move for Tasha Cole?
Every career move I've had has probably been an opportunity that was unexpected. And oftentimes it's the intersection of my experience, my contacts, my network, and also an opportunity. I've often been brought into situations or recruited into organizations or companies when they are in some period of transition or transformation. Could be a crisis communication, or it could be just that they are ready to move and expand to the next level. So this was an opportunity. I had been interested for a while and had been working when I was with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, working on expanding the number of young people working on Capitol Hill, young people of color. So that exposed me to the DEI work and what are some of the opportunities and challenges when it comes to diversifying a traditionally established and white organization, which U.S. Congress is still, despite all of the gains that have been made. And so there was a lot that I learned from that experience and through working on Capitol Hill as well with 2 congressional members. So when my former executive director called me up and asked me would I be interested in the diversity director position, we talked it through. I actually made the recommendation that we change the title, and I wasn't sure if I would take the job, but I made the recommendation that the title be changed to Chief Diversity Officer to reflect what was happening in the industry and reflect what was happening in the DEI space. And I always share that story because I think for me, it was very empowering to offer that suggestion up and for her to understand and receive it. And I'll be honest, I don't know if early in my career, I would have had the courage to look at a job title, to look at the position and to make that kind of recommendation and for it to be received. And so I always share that with women and when I talk to young people to do your research about the work that if you are interested in a field or a topic, to do your research and see what's out in the marketplace, see what are people making in this role and what are the titles and what to expect so that when you're having those conversations, you feel confident about it. But this was a really good opportunity for me to work on DEI issues in a political space. I'm the first to have this role. And now there's a great sister named Jessica Knight Henry who now has a similar title and role over at the DSCC and the DNC, Jamie Harrison. I know they are planning on hiring a chief impact officer, a similar titled role. And so I'm excited about it because I think it speaks volumes to the work that I'm doing and it validates so much that is happening in this space right now. I like to be a trendsetter. I like to be an innovator. I like trying out new things. So this has been, the work has been exciting. It can be challenging, but it's been really rewarding to come into and put some matrix and structure in place, and also to be supported by my colleagues and by my leadership in the value of DEI, particularly in a political environment.
Tasha, what has made you successful in managing change? When I think about working in politics, there is constant change between the members, the most important issues, the sentiment of Americans, and you are in situations where you often cannot control what is going to happen. How have you maintained your cool calmness as Ms. Cole and managed change like this?
Well, you may have to ask all of my former coworkers how cool and calm I have been. I have probably at sometimes been not as cool and calm as I would like, but I think I love change. I love change. I'm somebody when we were driving to work, when we could drive to work, I probably never took the same route every day. So I think I thrive in that environment. I think it challenges you to stay nimble. But you also have to put some accountability and matrix and discipline in place as well. And so there is a methodology sometimes to being adaptable to change because you have to embrace that. And particularly now in the workplace when we have so many different generations working in the workplace. So each generation has its own work style and its own work ethic. And so you have to kind of know if you're going to be managing teams or managing your peers or working with your peers or managing up, you're going to have to learn it's really important to be flexible. But you also have to maintain your principles, your values, and really know what's your work style and your work ethic. I'm not sure. I tease that I would love to code, but I don't know if that would be if I would want to work in a space where it's a little bit more siloed compared to a lot of the external engagement that happens when you are in politics. And so I think I find that it's important to stay calm. Oftentimes there's a lot around you. I jokingly at jobs have named things, Bookgate or, Bubblegum Gate, or, after Watergate. And it's really a way for me to say, oftentimes, whatever problem we're trying to solve is not as serious as we think it is. We are not plastic surgeons. We are not, sort of hostage negotiators, trying to, extract somebody from Syria. We're not CIA agents oftentimes. But we are often, managing serious public policy issues, or, some serious, political engagement issues. And so I take my work seriously, but I also try to remember that there are people, especially now with the pandemic, and we look at what the essential workers are doing. So many of them are on the front lines. They couldn't work virtually. They had to go in to the office. They had to go into their workplace. Trash still had to get picked up. Groceries, people were going to the grocery store. So, I mean, that really helps to put things in perspective, sadly. And I wish we did not have to lose almost 600,000 souls for us to recognize that everyone can contribute to work, and that whatever your contribution is, you have to put that in the context of, we are oftentimes, I want to be somebody who is working to live. I want to have work-life balance. And so I think it's important I try to find that in my spirit when a problem arises and I want to overreact, because I am a Cancer. So I can be emotional, about sports. I can be emotional about things I see on the news, but I also have to put it in context that I'm blessed to have choices. And I'm blessed to have choices about how I live and how I want to work. And so that's what keeps me grounded, is that I'm blessed and I'm living we're not even living our ancestors' dreams. There's no way that they could imagine that you could be doing all the work you're doing to help transform how we see sports, and who participates in sports and who watches sports. And for you and I to even have this. So I'm always blessed, and take myself back to my grandparents and their ancestors, and how my ancestors came into this country. And so I think that's what keeps me blessed and grateful and humble for all the opportunities that we have.
Yeah. And how do you lead through crisis?
Well, I think first I was a former reporter, and so I'm always going to be very objective, much to my friends' chagrin. Like, oftentimes they, especially when it comes to gossip, they, the tea and the receipts, they want me to be on one side or the other. And usually I am, but I also have learned as a reporter, a former reporter, there's usually three sides, and there's the truth. And then there's his side or her side, or his side and his side, and the truth. So I've really just learned that it's very important to try to gather facts. When I worked at the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation, I think there's some folks from, our former colleagues who are watching. And I would sometimes, if I'm dating myself, but if any of you all remember the miniseries Roots, the author, Alex Haley, it was his story of his family and how they came here from slaves from Africa. And sometimes you really feel like you are a historian, because you need to really gather the facts from everybody so that you can make an informed decision. And so that's really what I try to do, is to be very calm, and I really believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt. And again, for my personal friends who are watching this, they want me to pick sides. But oftentimes it's just really important, because people, there's usually a reason and a rationale as to why someone is making the decision. So I also try to apply empathy to those decisions and to the outcomes of what I receive.
Considering that you have experienced 9/11 on the Hill, anthrax, and a lot of other big moments and crises in our nation, what was your feeling on January 6, 2021?
It was surreal, but I will tell you, I listened to Mayor Bowser. And when Mayor Bowser, the mayor of Washington, D.C., told us to stay home, she, through the city platforms, online, social media, email, repeatedly, the mayor and her team had warned about not going downtown, not going near Capitol Hill. So sadly, it was almost a validation when everything happened. But I think it's important to bring this up because oftentimes women leaders, we may be criticized for being overprepared and being too cautious. But in this instance, and in many other instances, when you look at how mayors were leading, Mayor Keisha Bottoms, my FAMU Rattler down in Atlanta, Lori Lightfoot, some of our East Coast mayors and out West, so many of them had been warning the country about what they were seeing. There were governors and state legislators that were warning us, but it was surreal to me and it was sad. And I was scared for so many of my colleagues that worked on Capitol Hill. There were so many, I couldn't even remember who to text and check in on. And I can't imagine the terror that they must have, felt, because working on Capitol Hill, they warned you. We were adequately warned and prepared that, if something were to occur, what to do. But when that actually happens, you don't know how you're going to react. And if for anyone who is watching, just think about if you've ever been in a car accident or if you've been on a plane and there's turbulence, like you think you're going to react rationally, but fear sets in. Fear for yourself, fear for your colleagues, fear for those people who were the police officers. I know so many police officers, and they are good men and women who selflessly protect us, people they don't even know, and to have to be put in harm's way because one person who to this day denies his role in this process sent a bunch of people to Capitol Hill was disappointing, sad, made me angry. I was scared, and there's still security around the Capitol, and this is supposed to be the people's house. And so it's a awakening moment for our country. We don't need any more awakening moments. I hope that there are no more. So continue to keep those on Capitol Hills. Please continue to pray for them because imagine if your workplace was attacked. We just saw 2 workplaces this week within 10 days of each other. So imagine if you were at work and people came to attack your workplace. What would you do? Where would you hide? Do you know what to do? And so please continue to pray for them. It speaks to what you said about the mental health and the support that we need and the courage to admit that we may have experienced post-traumatic stress disorder and to what resources do we need? And there's been a number of articles in the New York Times that have so beautifully portrayed what the Capitol Hill was going through, because there were no hashtags like Capitol Hill Strong and the things that you see after other terrorist attacks. And so I think we can't minimize their experience, and we can't minimize the terror that they were experiencing in a place that is supposed to be secure.
Yes, and gosh, you just made me think about something I had not thought about. You are right. When there are other moments that mirror what happened on January 6th, we do have a call to action and hashtag, but there has not been that type of mobilization and support. So thank you for sharing that. You have definitely challenged me to make sure that I continue my prayers, not only for people who are working on Capitol Hill and their families, but to keep the conversation going as well, so it doesn't become a fast memory.
And if I can add to that, because to your point earlier, I had to stay informed about that. A young woman named Nicole Tisdale, there were some other young Hill staffers who really brought that concept to our attention. I did not come to that on my own. They spoke out. They had the courage to speak out about. We did not see the rallying that we see now that has become a ritual. People lay flowers. The news will profile those that lost their lives or were in danger. There's calls for action. There's calls for reform. And we didn't see that same support for the thousands of people who every day are working very selflessly on behalf of constituents across the country. And oftentimes it may be glamorized in movies. I know that the approval rating for Congress is not always high, but the members and their staff are doing work on behalf of their constituents every day. And so I think it's something important to think through as women. What role can we play in bringing attention and light when voices are not heard?
And how do you think women can cross that threshold from community advocating to actually running for office? I asked this question, Tasha, because research shows that women are very involved in community, whether it's working in the church, in their children's PTA, but do not take the step to actually become policymakers and running and winning office.
Well, that's what I really love about the work I do with Running Start. And I mean, we are really a part of what I consider a sister advocacy ecosystem. There's Emerge, there's She Should Run, there's Emily's List. I mean, I could go on and on, Higher Heights, that encourage women to run for political office and provide the resources that they need, either through training, through financial resources, or other support mechanisms for women when they decide to run for office. Because the studies show when women run, they win. And so oftentimes it's just a matter of women wanting to run for office, but also women have to often be recruited and asked repeatedly to run. So if you talk to a woman who's in elected office, many of them will share a story of what you described. They may have been a community activist. They would see something wrong happening in their community and want to change it. But there's also many cases where women have to be encouraged. And there's a circle of women or a circle of leaders or influencers who will approach someone, identify them, and encourage them to run for public office. And so that remains to be true. And I think platforms like this are really important to have women come on and talk about their journey, because many leadership roles in other sectors, the same dynamic has to happen. There have to be resources and mechanisms and platforms in place that encourage women and provide them the resources that they need to ascend to higher offices or to leadership roles within their organization.
We know the political scene has its highs and its lows. Can you talk about an experience, whether it was the change of guard, we'll say, or a tough experience with fundraising where you felt that low and questioned the contribution you were making and what powered you through?
You know, I have shared this story that I have been asked to make myself available to the marketplace before, which is a very long way to say that I have been fired from 2 jobs before. And I can tell you that is a very humbling experience for any one person. And I don't care what kind of job you have. So much of the work that we do does define our identity. And so both of those times were very transformative for me. But I believe that God was removing something that I would not walk away from. And so I came out better. I came out stronger because of it. It also does teach you about the value of saving your money, especially if you are somebody who is living paycheck to paycheck. And I remember one consulting job that I had, I had gone to a conference and I came back, and then that's when they, decided to tell me that they no longer needed my services. And I was like, well, why didn't you tell me before I came back? I would have stayed at the conference. And so,
I'm sure like probably somewhere warm, sunny.
Yeah, I'm like rushing to get back for a job I don't even have. And they were like, you know what? That's a good point. So it is also an opportunity. And once you've experienced that, if you are ever in a position where you do have to let someone go, you definitely have empathy for that. But I had to recognize, and it also taught me to appreciate that time when you are not busy. So I've had to counsel others who have lost jobs or lost opportunities. And I'm like, look, you're going to get another opportunity soon. So you might as well take advantage of this time. All these home projects you want to do, you promised yourself you were going to learn how to play the piano or just some great hobby. Do that now. Because once you get busy again, you won't have that time. So it's also time to see family and friends. I can remember I could travel on a Tuesday because I didn't have to be back at work. I didn't have a job to come back to. And I think it helped me when we first entered into the pandemic, and to sort of understand how you have to manage your own schedule. But and in both cases, especially the more recent time, I'm still close to the organization and the people. So I didn't allow myself to be bitter about the circumstances of what happened. And I had to acknowledge that they had to make a business decision, and that it was not personal. And so for me, that was really helpful for me to not let it define me as a person, as Tasha Cole.
Yes. That's something I preach as well, Tasha. I've also been laid off and let go. And I tell people, you are not your title. You are not your employer. The title you have is the title that particular organization gives people for the work that you were doing. Because even in another organization, you could do the same work and have a different title.
Correct.
What were some things that you did to move from losing an opportunity to getting your next opportunity?
Well, you have to be honest with yourself about the reasons why they let you go. If you think that you can handle it, you really want to ask that question, so that and especially true too, even if you are interviewing for a job and you don't get the job. I think it's smart to ask, why were you not selected? So I've had to really do my research around that. And also I had to be thoughtful about what my next opportunity would look like. And you also do have to, especially in this political business, you've got to get your story straight. And, because you're going to have to tell the story. And I remember, I'll give a shout out to Pam Birch-Ford from Florida, runs a great political platform called the Fort Group. And I remember her telling me that I needed to practice in the mirror, explaining my transition. And it really helped me to have to, and it's an old broadcast move, right? I mean, I've been on television before, so you're accustomed to looking at yourself within a screen, but it really helped me to feel comfortable telling my story and controlling my narrative, and not allowing, to your point, the title and the organization to dictate that. So that was what was really important for me, and to be thoughtful about what didn't work about the work that I was doing. And so that I could be very cognizant and looking for the next opportunity and what work environment I wanted to be in, and what managers and leaders and colleagues I wanted to surround myself with. What did I want my ecosystem to look like?
And what types of things would you encourage people to do after losing an opportunity to feel confident in negotiating? I've had people reach out to me and say, because I left or I was laid off or furloughed or fired, I don't know that I can ask for the title and money that I believe I deserve.
Well, don't sell yourself short. Do research on what is currently being provided in those roles. How are these roles being compensated? Right now, there's much of this is on the World Wide Web. And so, when I was coming along, it was very hard to find salary information. Now it's pretty accessible. And a lot of organizations are including salary in the job requirement, because it is a form of inclusion, and it's a form of exclusion to not list it. Some people see it as that. So there's a lot of organizations who are really taking the step to actually add the salary to that. But I think you've got to know the work, know your worth in particular, know what your lifestyle is like, what you need to live, and be prepared to negotiate. I mean, I can tell you, having been a fundraiser, I know that the answer is not always no. It's maybe just later. And so you really have to feel confident. I know it's easy for me to say that. It can be very scary to negotiate. And there's great programs out there now, actually, for women in particular. I know for a while the city of Washington, D.C. was even offering up a public class, for women. And there's a lot of platforms and organizations now, women-centric organizations, that are offering that salary negotiation. So I would really tell you, I would encourage you, if you have the opportunity, to seek those out, because there is what I would call a sort of strategy around it. But what I think is most important is that you do your research and know that you are worth, only you can define your worth. And you can define that for the organization and for the company during the negotiation. And I believe that hiring managers, I've been a hiring manager in a lot of different organizations, we respect the tenacity of somebody to come in and negotiate, because we know that they will apply that same tenacity in the work that they are doing. And so hiring managers, a good hiring manager is not going to be disgusted or insulted in the negotiation, or if you counter with that. And so, and oftentimes if you're a hiring manager, you have a salary range and you have a ceiling and you have a floor. And if the talent is good, because it's a lot of work to onboard new talent. And so people like retaining talent. It's definitely something. It's not just cost effective. It's just really good for productivity and for the institutional knowledge to retain good talent. And so, once you are into the organization, it's definitely an opportunity for you, as you're going through that process, to negotiate that. And hiring managers, if they're good, and if they're not, if they're intimidated by it or insulted by it, you may really want to think about if that is a good environment for you as well.
So can we go back to Running Start for a minute? I love the work that Running Start is doing. And I have even told my niece that she needs to apply. I can't believe she's a freshman in high school. So when I read your post, I was like, oh my gosh, Shalon now can do this. But
yes, and she knows somebody who's affiliated with the organization. So
yes, you're gonna put that little mouth of yours to good use.
Yes, Running Start. Susanna is our president. We have a great board of directors. It is really just what it says, to give women a running start. We have an elector program where I've traveled the country talking to young women, encouraging them, when we could travel, encouraging them to run for student government. There's a lot of studies that we are using as a part of our strategy show that women, if they run for student government, they are more likely to run for public office throughout their career. There's a lot of young women now who are serving in Congress who started off as student body presidents or in their student senate, or student, the House, some form of student government on campus. So it's a great opportunity to engage and work with young women. We also have a fellowship program similar to Congressional Black Caucus Foundation and Congressional Hispanic Association, Congressional Hispanic Institute, where they bring in young people and bring them to Capitol Hill and work in congressional offices. We place women usually in the congressional offices of women, so that's exciting for them. We have a high school program that you talked about with your niece. So all of these things will be virtual this year, but when we are back outside, the high school program, they come up for about 2 weeks. They're at Georgetown, but it's a sort of a full, rigorous program where we expose them to trainings and leadership opportunities. And they also get a chance to experience the culture of Washington, D.C. as well. And so kind of give them a taste of what federal government looks like. And so it's all of these programs, I think, are so critically important. And I really see them as feeding into other programs like Emerge and Emily's List, which kind of capture women who are, older and more established in their career. And so I think they're nice companions. But what I love about Running Start is because so many young women, when they are in high school, that's around the period when they start to lose some of the confidence that they have as young women. And so it's great when they come back into a college setting. They may be away from home and they may be away from some of their surroundings, and they have an opportunity to really be free and really explore how they want to lead and how they can lead as either in an elected office or, they may lead in some other way on their campus.
Oh, very cool. Well, everyone listening, definitely make sure that you tell anyone who has a young girl in high school or college about the Running Start program. It's a great program in general. Even if your daughter, niece, granddaughter does not have an interest in politics, to develop the leadership skills, understanding how to position themselves, negotiate. I also think that it would be the beginning to them becoming like Tasha, the broker of people, because of the network that they will be exposed to.
You're like an ambassador. We need to get you on the road talking about it. That was great. Yes, all of those things are so critically important, and they're transferable. I mean, we teach networking, we teach leadership, teach them how to, raise money. So all of these things are, even if they decide to pursue other professional opportunities, how to give a leader, elevator speech, all of these things are transferable in other aspects of their professional career.
Well, working with these young ladies, Tasha, when you think back, when did you get the political bug?
It's so funny. Growing up, I was into fashion, reading, writing. I don't know if I had a passion for politics until I got probably in television. I started out as a documentary producer for a statewide documentary show down in Florida called Florida Crossroads. Worked for Florida Public Television. And we also had a show during the legislative session called Today in the Legislature. And it's kind of pre-C-SPAN, so I'm dating myself a little bit, but the whole concept was to cover the committee hearings of the Florida House and the Florida Senate, the Florida Legislature, and to also cover the floor proceedings. So that was probably my first real interest in politics. And then I was, looking around for other work to do. Was kind of unsatisfied with some of my television work after a couple of years, and I had the opportunity to work with the Florida Black Caucus, and that sort of led to working with the Florida Democratic Party, which really came from a friend of mine who was working with the was working with them and suggested that I might be good for this role with the Florida Democratic Party. So that was probably really my first experience. I mean, I had done like the yearbook in high school. I didn't really do student government, but I think it was between the sort of covering the floor proceedings and seeing how laws were made and the influence of so many people in public policy and how it influenced and impact our communities.
Oh, that's awesome. And then that you got the bug and have been at it ever since. What's the best part about the work you do?
Oh, it's never the same day. It's never the same day. It's completely unpredictable. And I've heard this expression in politics. I always associate it with Chuck Todd. If he's not the one who said it, somebody can correct me. But he says every week is a day and every day is a week in politics. And so I just love it. But I think there's so many similarities between marketing and branding, the work that you're doing. I love being around big events. That's why I love the conventions. I've loved going to Super Bowls because I'm always interested in the whole behind the scenes and how do these big events get produced. Loved doing all of the 5 conventions that I've had the opportunity. I've been to every Democratic convention since Los Angeles back in 2000. Would have been in Milwaukee if it was in person. So I just love all of that's tied to it, and it's fun. And television too. There's a lot of similarities. People who work in media often work in politics and kind of go back and forth because it's really about taking concise information and making it relevant to audiences and making it appealing to them, and trying to either use metaphors or, the empathy to sort of relate and hope that they understand and appreciate why something that they're reading about on television or hearing about now. And look, we've just had a whole year of real life civics lessons because people were sitting at home. And for years, I've wanted people to be more interested in politics. And they would be like, where do you work? Who do you work for? Or they thought I worked for Barack Obama and that I was like personal friends with him and Michelle. So to see this increased interest in politics and to see how it is being covered, and even with the elector, they were going live from the state house of who was, that did not happen at any point in politics. So that's been fun. I've really enjoyed it.
Well, I'm sure it's very hard to choose, but between all the times you have been in chamber and the campaigns, conventions, Phoenix Awards, is there a favorite moment?
Wow. There's a lot. I've been blessed. Charlie Rangel has a book that says I haven't had a bad day since. And that's just how I feel. But I will tell you that I think it was about 7 years I spent with the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation were so rewarding. I mean, to really impact lives, impact young people, to spend time with you, I've met so many amazing people through that, superstars, but even average everyday people and people who didn't expect to be notables. I will share a personal favorite story. Eric Garner's mother. We all know tragically what happened to him, sadly, on my birthday. And his mother had to come to DC to speak on a panel. Eric Garner's mother had to speak on a panel during the Congressional Black Caucus Foundation's annual legislative conference. And I remember we had to help her get into the prayer breakfast. And, a lot of this was just what I did as a part of the work I did with the foundation during the week of the conference. And I remember after the conference, she sent me a postcard and wrote me and thanked me. And I can't tell you, I would probably get emotional telling this story. I always get emotional because the fact that this woman would take time to find my name and take my address down. And it was maybe only 1 or 2 years after his death. So obviously she would be in some state of mourning and had to relive the moment as a panelist. And for her to take the time to personally handwrite a note to me and send it to me. And I kept that on my poster board the entire time I worked at the foundation, because I said, this is what this is about. Yeah. And it's also about, there should not be any more Eric Garner mothers. I don't want this to be a growing caucus, which it sadly has become between Trayvon Martin and, Sabrina Fulton, when we think about Lucy McBath and her pathway to Congress. So to me, it reminded me of the power of the work that the collective can do to change lives, to change minds, and the impact that it had. But that also a woman could see in me that I was just doing my job, and that she would genuinely appreciate it was so incredibly moving to me.
It does make it all worthwhile. Long days, the battles. When you get something like that, certainly it reminds you of why you're doing it. Well, Tasha, this has been a really informative conversation. I've been enlightened. Comments, as you see from the audience, about how informative it was, but also always really fun to just catch up with you. We have some questions just regarding the Democratic Party, as well as just career. So for the first question, it is, why are you affiliated with the Democratic Party?
That's a good question. I really believe in the principles of the party, but particularly I believe in the our principle of being a big tent. And I can tell you it comes with work to have diverse voices, diverse opinions. But we are richer for it. It is the fabric of our country. Sadly, we were founded on forced diversity. When you think about the origins of how my ancestors came to this country, and so for us to be able to come to continue to evolve. But I truly believe in the values, and I really believe in those who are leaders in the Democratic Party. When I look at a James Clyburn, when I look at a Congresswoman Maxine Waters or Barbara Lee, or even when I think about our leaders like Keisha Lance Bottoms, they behold the same principles and values that I do, and so therefore I'm really proud to work for the party, but particularly the DCCC, because we represent the constituents, and we have the most diverse caucus, not just of Black members, but Hispanic, of women, Native American. Our AAPI community is represented in Congress. We know we have more we can do in terms of representation, but the other party does not have nearly the same representation, despite their efforts. And sadly, before the last president, they were making what I would consider some authentic efforts to diversify their party. But when they elected somebody like that, it was just the efforts just they couldn't sustain themselves. So
The next question is, when being let go, how did you ask your former employer for feedback?
It was different in two different instances. One, the person gladly offered up feedback, so I didn't really have to ask. In the other instance, I just asked what led to this. Was there anything that they would recommend I do differently? Um, Usually they are not prepared for that, but I will say that candidly, you particularly if you are in an at-will state, they have to have reason and rationale and cause around it. So I think in both instances there was some, they clearly had decided and made a decision. I hadn't done anything wrong. They just decided it wasn't a good fit. And so I took a lot away from that in terms of having to take credit for things and making sure that I amplified my contribution and my work. Because oftentimes as women, we may just sort of, be behind the scenes and not really want to amplify how we got things done. Not just that we did the work, but how we got it done. And so really making sure that you are jotting down notes. I tell a lot of young people, take notes at your job, how you got things, save all your work, but save how you got something done. Because oftentimes when you're interviewing for a job, hiring managers will want to know, because most people, you can find someone to do the job, but how did you do the job? What did it take?
That's a really good point. I'm taking a note on that one. It's going to my playbook. The question is, since it is Equal Pay Day, how are Democrats working to eradicate the pay gap between men and women?
I think it's an excellent question. I think continuing to highlight it is really important. I know that I would not pretend to rattle off all of the legislation that has probably been introduced in the halls of Congress and actually even in the state legislature. So I think we have to continue to highlight this as an issue as a community, that there is a pay gap, and also recognizing and highlighting how it impacts our families when women are not paid. Like that has a direct impact on the success of a household. And I think sometimes we need to take some of the sort of personal dynamics out of this, but also really explain the impact that it can have on a family, because it hinders their ability to spend money in the community, to spend money, and sort of be an economic situation where they can spend money. So I think it's really important for Democrats in particular to lead on this issue because of the number of workers that we tend to represent and advocate for who are still falling far behind. And so I encourage this advocacy. I know that there are leaders, especially in the halls of City Hall, who need to continue to advocate for minimum wage and other advances on the municipal level to continue to raise awareness around this issue beyond the public service, beyond sort of the social media campaigns that we see. We also have to continue to be educated about what we spoke of earlier about how we are compensated and whether or not we are being compensated on our jobs, because there's a lot of studies that show that the millions and billions of dollars that women leave on the negotiating table. And so I think that's really important for us to continue to advocate that, because that impacts our communities.
And I will take one more question. It says, if when you produce another documentary, what would you want it to be about?
That's a great question. I think if I had the opportunity, I think, to produce another documentary, I probably would want to focus on something that has happened in history that has not really gotten the full credit that it deserves. I've done a documentary on slavery, domestic violence, adoption, all in an effort to raise awareness at a time when it deserved it. So I think if I had the opportunity to do it, it would be on history or Idris Elba, one of the two. Maybe Idris Elba might let me, do a documentary, and maybe Oprah. I think we've heard a lot about her story, but I love all the behind the scenes when you look at Michelle Obama, and I think so many of us when we saw Meghan Markle and the Prince Harry interview, there's a whole generation that didn't watch the Oprah Winfrey Show. And so I think it might be fun to do a documentary on her or moments in history that we did not learn enough about when we were in school. And you want? I can do one on you. How about you? A documentary on you? That'd be fun. Follow you around Atlanta Falcons, those dirty birds.
Right. Michigan, DC to the A, huh?
Yes, we can't do Michigan. My sister's in Ohio State, big Ohio State, like Buckeye, huge, like
the state Michigan from.
Yeah.
Michigan.
Okay. Good. When I call her during a game, she's like, the Ohio State game's on, right?
Is she cheering though?
Right.
Look, come on, you got to go for the Big Ten when you're not in it. Yeah. Well, thank you again, Tasha. Before I let you go, we do not do rapid fire, but I ask all of my Shemaker coaches to just complete 3 sentences. The first one for you is, I get dressed to this song when I have a big meeting coming up.
I can't say on here. No, I'll say blow the whistle.
Get your game face.
I went to school in Florida.
Right.
I gave the tamest version of a song I could give.
I know I have made it when the Washington Post has this headline about me.
The broker of people.
Ooh.
How you like that?
I like that. That's my day. I like it a lot.
Yes.
And the final one is, I will run for office if this happens.
Never. I would run for office if if President Obama calls me and tells me he wants me to run for office,
Okay.
or Michelle, maybe
Okay.
Michelle first.
Someone in that household.
Right. I was saying, Michelle calls me and says, T. Cole, then you might see me step up.
Okay. Well, you guys got it first here. Cole is running. You know who made the call. Any closing words of wisdom for our listeners this evening?
Let's just keep supporting great platforms like this. I look forward to seeing episodes 10 and on. And so I think we just have to continue to support great platforms like this. I'm so grateful to be here. This was so much fun. Thank you. And thank you to everyone who's paying attention and listening and watching tonight.
Yes. Well, thank you again, Tasha. I always appreciate your support directly and indirectly. We'll definitely have to have you on again to catch up. You can give us the inside scoop on what's happening in DC and how things are transforming. And we'll have to get back to DC for another NFL glam party. Looking back at those pictures really made me miss DC and all the fun that we have. So when we are out of this pandemic, I'll definitely be back and we can do this in person.
Yes. Yes. I love it.
Thank you and have a good night. And thank you everyone for watching episode 9. Wasn't T. Cole good? I just love her. Oh my gosh, so many gems. And I really appreciated her candor on getting back up. You know, in life, we may get knocked down, but that's not the end of the game. You get back up and you move on to the next play. You are still a champion. And that's really what SHEMAKERS is about. So I hope that you jotted a lot of notes and filled your playbook up tonight. Remember, Wednesday for SHEMAKERS Live is not the only time that you can connect with Hills and Helmets. We are wherever you are. So connect with us at Hills and Helmets on Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Next week on SHEMAKERS, we have Ellen Hill, the Vice President, Marketing for the Detroit Tigers. Ellen has been in her role for more than a decade, and she's worked with the Tigers for over 20 years. So I'm excited to talk to her not only about branding, but reinventing yourself. How do you stay fresh and keep being innovative? So save the date and set a reminder to join us next week right here on SHEMAKERS Live podcast. Until then, remember, you are a SHEMAKER, and I am here to help you unleash your power, make big plays, get in the end zone, and win. Have a great week. Good night.